Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Fairy God Boss live webinar. We are super excited to have you all join us today, and we're going to give folks just a couple more minutes to connect, get acclimated with the platform, and feel familiar with what we're doing. But while we're waiting, as usual, please feel free to use the chat function and let us know where you're tuning in from today. You should see on the right-hand side of your screen, there's a chat box. If you're comfortable, say hello to the panelists and myself. Let us know where you're dialing in from, maybe what you're excited about for today's conversation, or just generally how you're feeling. It's good to know that we're not just talking to ourselves, and there are people on the other side of this screen that are listening in to us today. So whenever you have a moment, feel free to just let us know where you're coming in from. A couple folks from Stanford. Oh, a lot of folks from Stanford already. That's perfect to see. My name is Morgan. I am a senior account manager at the Muse and Fairy God Boss, and I'm based in Austin, Texas. I was just in Nashville this weekend meeting some beautiful coworkers in person for the first time, but I'm back home in Texas and super excited to be here. I see everybody else coming in from Georgia, from Canada. So we've got both some domestic and international folks joining, which is perfect for today's conversation. Before we get started with the full discussion, I do have a couple of announcements, some housekeeping items to run through with the group. First and foremost, the session will be recorded. So if you do have to jump for whatever reason, don't worry. We will have a recording sent to you and all the registrants who registered for today's event. So do not worry if you have to leave early. We certainly understand that life happens and you might have busy things to get to. And of course, as I already mentioned, please, throughout this conversation, use the chat function. We hope that you will use that stage chat to respond to comments that you hear from our panelists, to ask questions of our panelists. We will have an opportunity to answer some questions directly from you all. So if you're comfortable and you're willing, feel free to add some comments, some questions, some thoughts that you have for us throughout today's conversation as well. With that said, I do want to introduce Fairy God Boss. Fairy God Boss is the largest online career community for women. Millions of women visit our platform for hard-to-find information about how companies actually treat women employees. But more than that, they also come to us for connections, community advice, opportunities, and of course, virtual events just like the one that you all are attending today. And with that said, I would love to start pivoting to the conversation and get into it. I'm excited to kick off today's event. 3 executives unpack planning for everything from families to careers to retirement, sponsored by Bank of America. And we have 3 executives, hence the title, from Bank of America, who are here to discuss their experiences working for the bank's workplace benefits business. I'm thrilled to be joined today by Stacey Bucheri, Head of Institutional Retirement, Client Management, and Workplace Benefits for Bank of America, as well as Aaron Donnelly, who's a Managing Director of Institutional Retirement, Product Management, and Distribution for Workplace Benefits. And last, but certainly not least, Ms. Amanda Ross, Managing Director of Workplace Benefits for Bank of America as well. Okay, I have talked too much already, so let's get into it. It's so wonderful to have the 3 of you here. I just gave your names and your titles, but I think our audience would love to hear in your own words who you are, where you're based, and what you do. So Stacey, I'm going to have you start with an introduction of yourself. Anything I didn't add that you would like to tell to the audience? We'd love to hear more about you.
Great, Morgan. Thanks so much. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are in the country. It's a pleasure to be joining you here today, and it's also a pleasure to be joined by Aaron and Amanda. We work very closely together in our day-to-day, so super psyched to be on this panel with the 2 of them. So as Morgan mentioned, I am Stacey Bucheri. I've been with Bank of America for just celebrated 26 years with the company, so super proud of that, and have had a multitude of different roles in the time that I've spent here at Bank of America. So I've been very fortunate to move around the company a lot, and each time presenting a brand new challenge to me in terms of my career path. I'm based in New Jersey. I grew up and went to college at Villanova, so did take a short stint in Pennsylvania, but have lived in New Jersey predominantly my entire life. On the personal side, I do have 2 children. I have a 19-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter. I just dropped my son off up at New Hampshire to go to his last year of high school. So it was very sad for me to drop him off. It's 5.5 hours from me. So my mom heart was a little bit sad 2 weeks ago, but he's doing great and thriving. So it's really excited to see him grow. And then the last thing I'll share from a Bank of America perspective, I am privileged to be one of the enterprise co-chairs for our Lead for Women Employee Resource Group. And we are focused on helping women navigate through their career journeys here at Bank of America. So I sit side by side with 3 other co-chairs. Our employee resource group is 50,000 members strong and growing every single day. So I have the privilege of doing that in addition to my day job, which is managing the clients for workplace benefits.
Sounds like you might be just a little bit busy, Stacey, but excited you're able to join us today. Erin, why don't you go next?
Sure, and good morning and good afternoon to you all. My name is Erin Donnelly. I lead one of our product and distribution teams here at Bank of America in our workplace benefits business. I'm actually celebrating 5 years with Bank of America this month, although I did earlier in my career spend more than a decade with Bank of America Merrill Lynch. My career path has not been linear. Over the years, I've juggled things to take care of my family. I have 3 children. Along the way, I did step away from Merrill Lynch as a managing director, which was a very difficult decision, but it allowed me to pursue an alternate path to stay engaged in my career and to get my MBA. I was delighted to rejoin Bank of America in 2019. And what I like most about my role today is our vision and mission to support employees as they save and plan for retirement. And nowadays, if I'm not at work, I'm often traveling to visit family and friends and just spending time outside. My kids are now high school and college age, which is awesome and makes more of those things possible. Thanks for having me.
Yes, happy to have you, Erin. Amanda, wrap us up.
Great, thank you. And I'll echo Stacey and Erin's comments about excited to be here this morning. So I've been at the bank for 20 years, just celebrated my 20th year. My role today is head of participant experience. So you think about anything that we do with an employee when it comes to communication, when it comes to financial wellness and education, that with the employees that sit inside of the plans that we serve falls inside of my organization. Most of my career was spent in sales and retirement product distribution. And I joined the institutional team about 3 years ago to bring some of that expertise about serving the 2-legged client over to the institutional business. And it's been a great transition. I also serve as an executive sponsor for our Parents and Caregiving Network, which is an ERG, as Stacey mentioned, that really focuses on support, providing resources for anyone, parents, caregivers of all kinds across our organization. I am a caregiver, on steroids. I have 4 young kids, 10 and under. And I have a mother that, I take very close care of. So that resource group really resonates with me. But when I'm not here, I'm teaching. I'm an adjunct professor at Boston University Graduate School. It's a passion of mine, and just trying to figure out what practice, what kid is going to at what time. That's about all I've got capacity for. So thank you again for having me.
Love it. Okay, so 3 phenomenal, very busy, very active women. This is going to be a great conversation. I'm glad you all are here. Wonderful. Well, let's jump into it. We have a lot of questions to get through with about 50 minutes left, so let's get things started with a layup of a question, if you will. That's sarcastic, of course. How do you all personally manage work-life integration, especially given your roles as not just executives, but each of you have families, your caregivers, your friends, your partners? What strategies have you found effective for managing each of those things and identities that you hold? And Amanda, I'm going to go ahead and send this question to you first.
Yeah, I sit on panels, and I watch panels often on this topic, and so many women are like, if you do X, Y, Z, like it's easy. Like I'll tell you, like at least for me, it's never easy. It's a battle every single day. And while I do think I've got a pretty tight process to run our house, it's still a challenge that is filled with uncertainty and a lot of guilt sometimes, every single day. So I just want to start by saying that, because I think as women, we put so much pressure on ourselves to like figure out how to do it all. And when you don't feel like you're crushing it at all levels at the same time, you feel like you're doing something wrong. So let me just say, even though I'm on this panel, like it's still really hard. But I think the three things that I really try to do are like, I try to pick my place. And what I mean by that is I look at my week, I look at my month, and I say, like, where are the things I cannot miss? Whether that's at work or whether that's at home. And they can be everything from a huge meeting with hundreds of clients to my 6-year-old's first soccer clinic with a bunch of other children, right? But where do I absolutely need to be? And that's number one. The second piece is then setting expectations with everybody around me, where I'm going to be, why I'm going to be there, and where I'm not going to be. And being confident and grounded in those expectations. You could also call them boundaries. But I also think I need to set expectations with myself too, right? That I'm not going to be at everything. I'm not going to be the mom that bakes the goods, right? I'm not going to be the employee that can leave on a Sunday afternoon to get to a meeting early. Like there's things I just can't do at this phase in my life. So the second piece is setting boundaries, setting expectations. And then the last piece, and this is the hardest, is to try to not lose myself in it all, right? To try to prioritize my needs and places that are important to me on the calendar as well, so that I don't burn out. I find when I don't do that, I race to burnout and resentment and, just stress and irritability. And that's not fun for anybody. So picking my place, communicating that clearly to those around me, and really ensuring that I anchor to some version of I don't even want to say care, but prioritization has been helpful for me.
It's a great framework. And I think if someone's not taking notes, they should be in writing those 3 bullets down, because it feels really resonant. But it also harkens back to how you started the conversation, which is you're not going to be perfect. So like giving yourself the grace for within each of those 3 frameworks to still maybe make a mistake and fail and come back stronger anyway. Erin, I'd love to hear from you. How do you sort of think about work-life integration, balancing all the different hats that you're wearing?
Yeah, it's a great question. And work-life integration is hard, right? I mean, you just heard Amanda talk through some of that. It's something I personally have gotten better at over the years. If I think back, as I was climbing the ranks in my role, and I had 1 and then 2 and then 3 kids, you're juggling a lot. There is no roadmap to fit all the pieces together. There's no roadmap to what integration looks like. But over the years, what's been most effective for me is the listening and the planning, right? So listening to my family members, whether it's my husband or my kids, on what do they need, and then the planning, not only the stages of life where you need your nanny, then you need someone who's going to drive your kids to and from activities. For me, I'm just trying to avoid fire drills at all costs with a clear calendar of commitments, again, both at work and at home. I would say another thing that's been really important for work-life integration is ensuring each child is in the right school where they can best grow and learn. Kids are all different. And again, that listening and that planning and just, caring for their needs. And then frankly, also understanding and taking advantage of what's available to you from your employer. And again, for me, across the various phases of parenthood, I would say those things looked different along the way, whether it was on-site daycare, for my first child, it was, access to backup daycare as they got older and you had multiple kids and somebody be sick or the nanny couldn't come. And then even things like today, they're older, and access to things like teledoc when you have to get, medical attention, you can't get the appointment, you can't, drop everything and run. I think, the company and companies in general, they've come a long way in terms of helping support just managing work and life, which has been great.
I love that. And the idea that the way that you manage work-life integration will change every year, maybe every month. So thanks for calling that out, Erin. Like you're always going to be evolving, and the way in which you balance and integrate will change. So being at a company that offers benefits to support that is instrumental, or just creating that sort of flexibility for yourself and your family and friends is also so important too. Stacy, what about you? Wrap us up here. How have you thought about work-life integration, and what successful strategies have you deployed over the years?
Yeah, thank you. And Amanda and Erin said a lot of really great stuff that I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with. What I would just add on top of what they already said is, first and foremost, the mother I am today is very different than the mother I was when my children were young. And being a young mom, you felt like, and Amanda said this, you had to be perfect at everything. And you would drive yourself crazy thinking about, am I here? Am I performing 100% at work? Am I performing 100% at home? What I would advise is be present where you are. And that has been a huge learning lesson for me. If I am at home with my family, I have to be present. I have to be in the moment. If I'm at work, I'm present and in the moment. And you have to tell your family, I'm at work now. And if you need something, and a teenage daughter tends to need something every 5 minutes, that's an absolute emergency. You have to say, I'll deal with it when I get home. So be present would be the first thing. Second would be don't take things home. So this was something I got into a very bad pattern on. I have a big team. I have over 250 people. And you leading a team of that size, you tend to bring their problems home with you. So it's when you walk out the door of work, leave behind everything that has happened throughout the course of that day. And it's getting into a little bit of being present, because when you get home, you want to be focused on what's happening in the household and not reflecting on what happened throughout the day. So leaving behind what happened throughout the day and focusing on what you need to focus on at home. And then third, don't be shy to lean on people. So Amanda and I always talk about, we commiserate, we talk about our situations. You need that network within your workplace to be able to say, I suck today, and I'm okay saying that out loud, because that's how I feel. And to have that network to be able to lean on and really be open, be transparent, be candid, and seek that out, because you really need that within the workplace, and just understand that people are going through the same things that you are. So I would say be present, leave it behind, and really get a network of people that you can rely on and really talk to openly.
All great advice. And the last thing that you said, Stacey, makes me think about a motto that I've tried to embody, which is everyone is just doing their best with what they have. Like, everyone is really just doing their best. So giving each other grace, giving yourself grace, asking for help when you need it, which we know is the hardest thing sometimes to do. But we're all just really trying our best, and our best can be enough, but sometimes it can't be. But giving yourself the flexibility to bounce back the next day is so important. Okay, let's move along, because those were great tenets. And I think one of my teammates is taking notes for me and for others. So that's fantastic. I'd love to sort of move along to thinking about your career journey specifically. You all are fairly senior executives. You've had different career pathways, which you articulated in your introductions. And I'd like for you to describe a pivotal moment or a pivotal decision that helped shape your career journey. So maybe this was a decision that you made for yourself. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe something sort of happened to you that really also sort of shifted your perspective or your direction. But feel free to walk us through a pivotal moment that helped shape where you are today. And Erin, I'll have you start with this one.
For sure. In terms of a pivotal moment, I mean, I mentioned it a number of years ago. I made the difficult decision to step away from my career for a period of time. Amidst the professional strides that I was making, I was facing a personal cost with my young family. Just too much travel. I lived too far away from where my role was, and it wasn't working. And so it was a pivotal moment, and a number of conversations with my boss at the time here at Bank of America Merrill Lynch, who was very supportive, led to what I call my no regrets decision. And at the time, leaving the company on such positive terms would turn out to be a hidden asset for me later on. That was quickly followed by yet another pivot, and one that I didn't necessarily see ahead of me at the time. But after being at home for a few months, I started getting asked to pick up a project here or there for a number of industry colleagues. And that led to me opening my own consulting business, an LLC. I rented office space a few blocks away from my kids' grammar school. I bought the desk, I bought the printer, the laptop, and I worked part-time as a consultant and on my schedule. I did that for a few years, which led to me ultimately rejoining the workforce, which with one of those companies I was consulting for, and I did that remotely. That enabled me to push a little bit further into the things that I wanted, which was pursuing my MBA at NYU, which is something I had wanted to do for some time. And then eventually coming home here to Bank of America in our workplace benefits business. As I mentioned earlier, my career journey, it has not been linear, but I've grown in so many ways as a result of those pivots. And I do like to share them when I can, as other folks are thinking through kind of similar decisions.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Embracing the pivot, right? Like things happen and you roll with it. The flexibility, the adaptability that you have demonstrated in your work history is so exciting for me to see and hear as well. Stacey, what about you? Talk to us about some pivotal moments in your career journey that come to mind.
Sure. So I mentioned earlier, I've been with the company 26 years, and I've been fortunate to be asked to take a lot of really cool opportunities along that journey. One in particular, I was a young mother. My youngest was 2 years old. My son was 4 years old. And I had a leader that I admired come to me and ask me to take a role that would require me to go to New York City every single day. So for context, I live 2 hours by train away from New York City. So I'd be commuting to downtown New York. And it was a huge decision for me and my family, because essentially I would be leaving the house at 5 a.m. and I would be coming home 7 p.m. most evenings. And it was 5 days a week. So there wasn't any flexibility at that time to say work a couple of days at home or a couple of days local. It was, you need to be in New York City every single day. So my husband at the time, he's since retired, was in law enforcement and he was working shift work. So we had to really balance this whole maze of how we were going to be there for our children who were very young at the time. But I made the decision, I took the pivot and I said, I'm going to do this. And it really springboarded my career from there. I was able to meet a tremendous number of people, got a lot of really great experience. But there was a point in time, a year and a half later, I'm going to tear up when I say this. I went to pick up my daughter at daycare and she was calling the daycare provider mom. So at that moment in time, I said, I need another pivot here. So I went to my manager. I had a very candid conversation with her and I said, I love working with you, but I can't go to New York City anymore every single day. So we worked through something, and having that voice and being able to articulate, this is my need, was well received, and she was more than willing to work with me. So while the opportunity and the ability to have that role really helped my career, I was able to balance it with everything else going on in life. And then from there, from that opportunity forward, I have really leaned on managers who have been mentors to me, who have been advocates of mine, to really help me decide what is the next best role for me, and have trusted them. So while there have been roles where I know I did not check every box, I have taken the willingness to say, yes, I'll do it, even though I only meet 50% of those criteria, but I'll take a chance on myself and I'll go ahead and I'll take that role. And they've all worked out amazingly well.
I'm smiling ear to ear. That feels so good to hear. And it's so exciting to hear. You also mentioned your previous manager when you made that decision to pivot out of the 5 days a week in office was a woman, which may have played a part in sort of how you were able to get that flexibility. But I think it feels so wonderful to see yourself represented in leadership, to have mentors who look like you, who have experiences similar to your own. And I imagine it might make a difference. So I love that you were able to be able to negotiate that and navigate that as a new mom. And then have that flexibility continue on through the mentorship that you've had over the years. That makes me feel very excited as well. Moving along, I want to transition a little bit to what each of you touched upon so far, which is companies that really foster this professional and personal growth. You just mentioned a great example, Stacey, like having mentors and managers who really see you and push you to go for opportunities you may not typically go for. But I want to know specifically, what steps do you think companies can take to foster a culture that supports growth professionally, in addition to general well-being for their employees? Are there any actions or activities that you think companies can be doing or already doing that really excite you throughout the industry? And Amanda, I will send this question to you first.
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer this question by sharing a little bit about my journey with Bank of America. I mean, when I started with Bank of America, I was out of college and I left for a hot second to go try something else and quickly came back. But my priorities were different. I was young, I was single. What I wanted from the bank was I wanted career development. I wanted money to get designations and extra degrees. I wanted tuition assistance. I wanted them to allow me to travel. I've moved 5 times for the company, 3 of them cross-country moves. And those were at a time in my life when I kind of asked for that. I asked for the opportunity to be exposed to different cities and try on new things. And all of that was met with support. Well, then as I got older, I got married and I had kids. I had 4 kids in 6 years. And so, I'm on this track. The bank knows that I want to keep moving up. But I keep coming in and saying, oh, yeah, I'm pregnant again, right? And I'm going to go out and actually take a maternity leave, a full maternity leave. And I kept going on the track. Like, that's one thing I talk about when I talk about the bank. And not to be cheesy, but like I could get emotional about it because I wasn't ever taken off the track. And like, that's just like not common. For women, when we have to lean into building our families, a lot of times it's at the detriment of our career. And it was not like that here. I'll tell you a story. I was nursing and I was traveling a lot. And at the beginning of my leave, I would have to go find like places that allowed me to, I'm not joking, chip off blocks of dry ice so I could transport my breast milk home to my kid at the end of my travel stay, lug it through TSA, the whole thing. I went to the bank and I was like, look, I want to keep traveling. I'm enjoying this, but this isn't working. And they went out and brought in Milk Stork, which is a company that like has the box waiting at the hotel for when you get there and then overnights it. It's just and they heard me and they supported me. So my point in that is the bank has helped give me benefits as I've evolved and grown as a woman, not just at work and as a leader, but as a mother, as a daughter with an aging parent with dementia, like the whole thing. So, I think if you can build a benefits package, but also an ERG group package, an employee resource group offering, resources for all the peripheral stuff that your employees deal with every day, you're going to have people. Look at Stacey and I have been here for 100 years. Erin left and came back. It says something about a company. And so I think Bank of America in particular and women's needs is just like over the top. And I just couldn't be more grateful. But I think that's a huge thing. It's the whole employee. It's not just what they do when they're at work.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Those are great anecdotes. And I think represent the investment that Bank of America has made in a holistic person, like a human, not just certain parts of yourself, but a realized human being who changes right. and evolves and has experiences. Stacey, anything you want to add to this in terms of steps that companies can take to continue investing in whole people as employees, professionally and personally?
Yeah, so I think about it very similarly. So what I like to say is you should be able to bring your whole self to work every single day. So when you walk in the building, it should be your whole self, regardless of what you're going through in life. You should be able to bring that to the workplace and seek out assistance and help with what you're going through. Within workplace benefits, we have an organization that focuses on research, so thought leadership and putting out research pieces. And the woman who runs our organization, she's very provocative in terms of her thinking, and we put out a piece last year on menopause. So the workplace is not talking about menopause, and there are so many women in the workplace today that are going through menopause. And in the seat that I sit in the organization, which is talking to clients every single day, they were blown away that Bank of America would actually go out there and very prominently talk about, we studied menopause, we studied how employers and employees believe they're being supported throughout the phase of menopause. And there's a huge divergence between an employee feeling supported and an employer actually providing that support. So that's industry leading, that's provocative. And we do that all the time here. So we identify a core need, we understand it through research and thought leadership, and then we develop solutions on how we can be an industry leader in helping an employee through that journey. So that's one of the main reasons I'm super proud to be an employee at Bank of America, is because no matter what I'm going through, I know that there is a resource or a set of resources available for me to pull off the shelf, and nobody's pushing them down my throat. It's for me to go out there and do the research and figure out what exactly I want to take advantage of. And then the last thing I'll say, the employee resource groups here within Bank of America, they are huge. And we are encouraged every single day to either join an employee resource group or be a leader in an employee resource group. So I mentioned earlier Lead for Women, which is one of the ones that I am an active leader for. It is such an opportunity to talk to people who are similarly situated to you, have conversations, network. So when you think about Amanda's point about your career pathing, it's an ability to advance your career while at the same time fulfilling more of a personal and passionate need of yourself.
These are great examples. And I imagine as an employee, you just feel really empowered at Bank of America to ask for things that you need and to know that it's being received and it's being researched and it's being thought about really intentionally. As I hear you all talking, I'm just like, oh, what a sense of empowerment that you leave with, knowing that it's not just talking into the void and asking for help and visibility into nothingness. There's people there on the other end who are listening to you and making improvements to company culture because of what you're saying. I have a similar question. So we can just keep with this sort of examples of how Bank of America really supports employees. And Erin, I'll loop you into this conversation as well. Can you share any additional examples about how the bank, and specifically the workplace benefits division that you all work in, have positively impacted employees' lives or your own life, if you're willing to, share an example of how you've taken advantage of a benefit?
Sure. Be happy to. There's really three things that stood out for me as I was thinking about this question. The first way I think the bank positively impacts employees' life, or even my own life, is through the career development programs and the focus on internal career mobility here at Bank of America. The expectation for all of us as leaders is that we are developing our teams and that we too are being developed to be the next leaders within the company. So I think from a career management perspective, employees have the ability to build very powerful and very rewarding careers here inside the bank. I mean, it's a dynamic company in a dynamic industry for sure. The second thing that comes to mind is the access that we have to the employee resource groups. And we heard a bit about this from Stacy just now, but those employee resource groups are an outlet. They're another group to tap into, whether it's just having colleagues that you can talk with about things that you're trying to, tackle or think through in terms of like your next career move. But whether it's the women resource group, I'm a mentor through OLA, our Hispanic employee group. There's so many opportunities through these ERGs to connect with others, seek guidance, and think out loud with colleagues. And I think that's super powerful. And then I'd be remiss if I wasn't talking about just some of the benefits of the products that we make available through workplace benefits. We're here working, over the months and the years, and our employers give us the opportunity to save in our 401k. The bank issues, sharing success stock awards to its employees. I happen to have a high deductible health plan, and I have an HSA account. There's just so many things that are available here at the bank to help you, improve your own life, and then work with your employees as they're trying to think through how to manage careers and take advantage of all the benefits.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for those additions. And again, it's just like really empowering to see such a holistic view of how to best support employees. I want to pivot to an audience question. We're moving along about halfway through, and there's one question I'd love to ask the group, given your experience as mothers. So this is from an audience member named Lauren. She recently started a new job, and she's looking to potentially start a family with her partner in her second year of marriage, but she doesn't want to consider maternity leave too early. How long should you wait to have kids before starting a job? And I know that is subjective, but I imagine you all faced a very similar question at some point in your career. So Amanda, we can pivot to you first. How did you think about when to have kids? Like,
I needed to find a guy first, and that was a struggle. So no, I mean, listen, when I was in my 20s, I was super into my career. And it's funny because if I could go back, I mean, regrets useless, but I might not have leaned into it so much because I didn't even meet my husband until I was like in my early 30s. And then I had my last baby at 40. So now I go to her orientation for kindergarten, and I swear people are like, are you the grandmother, the mother? Like, what? I'm the oldest one in the room. But I was able to get to a pretty high level in my career before I even started having kids. So I was able to set my terms and the boundaries I talked about earlier a little bit easier because I was more senior. So like there's a trade-off. But what I would say is, in my opinion, I don't think there's any, like if I hire someone and they tell me that they're pregnant 6 months later, like it's all good. Like I'm hiring somebody for the long haul. So if the question is around, oh, I just started, should we think about getting pregnant or should I put in a couple, like you do what's right for your family first is my view. But what I will say is when you have the ability to lean into the job without all the other stuff, like lean into it, and you decide what that timeline is. But I am grateful that I really took the risk, said yes, was the one that would move and be mobile before I had the kids, because you'll think that having a kid will change the dynamic of how you work. You'll think you understand, but at least for me, I could have never imagined how much it actually changed the dynamic. So I wouldn't let your fear of how your employer is going to view you be a factor. Let me say that. I would lean into your career now, or even while you're contemplating having a family, while you don't have the kids yet, so you can kind of make that trajectory as fast as possible before that. But then, like, once it happens, if you get the right employer, like, it's a part of who you are. It's a part of you developing. So I don't think there's a magic number, but those
I
are
think
my
that's
things.
helpful. Yeah, I think that's helpful, and it's very transparent, and I appreciate it. I had a conversation with other women who were working mothers, and we talked a lot about how the skills that you have as a mom translates to the skills that you apply in the workplace. It's not as though you are losing out on experiences. You are gaining more experiences by managing 4 different calendars and 5 different little bodies. Like it's a tactical experience. Your skill building. It's not as though you're losing out on quality professional development at all. Stacey, anything, or Erin, anything you want to add to that question from the audience member? We feel good about Amanda's answer for us.
Amanda nailed it. My personal experience when I had my first child, I was working for a woman who was really career oriented. She had her own family, but you never knew she actually went to anything with her family. She was that focused on her job. When I went to her to tell her I was telling her I was taking the minimum amount of leave, and she said, "Are you crazy? You need to take as much leave as possible." And I was like, shocked. So your leader, and I think be confident and trust in the person that you're working for, that they're going to want to work with you, because what she said to me, this is a once in a lifetime, maybe a twice in a lifetime experience. You need to take every moment of time that the company is offering you.
And I'll say this, I mean, Stacey, Erin, you'd probably agree. You're never going to meet a woman, no matter how senior she is, that says, I wish I spent more time at work when my kids were little. Like, you're
100%.
never going to see that. You're never going to see that. So I agree.
Because it goes by too quickly. So,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, I appreciate that. And I think Lauren, our question asker, does as well. Okay, jumping back into a couple more questions that I have before we pivot to a few more from the audience and make our way through. I want to go back to sort of your independent careers, especially in workplace benefits. I think a lot of folks have a curiosity around this industry and sort of how it's evolving. Stacey, you mentioned the importance of research. Like there's so many different ways and avenues to get involved in workplace benefits. And we know the value that it brings to employees as represented by this conversation. What advice do you have for anyone who might have an interest in getting involved in this industry, who might want to, become someone who does what you do? Any advice or sort of tips and tricks when it comes to getting your foot in the door or beginning to sort of make a name for yourself within the industry? Stacey, we'll start with you for this one.
Yeah. So what I would say is, So within our what we do every day, workplace benefits, we're very focused on retirement benefits and making sure people are planning for a healthy retirement. Being successful in our organization does not mean you need to be an expert in all retirement products. What you need to be is you need to be somebody who thinks in an innovative way. So is constantly keeping an eye on what's going on in the landscape, what are the trends, what's on the hearts and minds of the people, because at the end of the day, we're serving people who are employees of these companies. So what is important to them? How are needs evolving and changing? You have to be curious. You have to ask questions. You have to constantly be willing to kind of challenge the mainstream and say, how can we be even better at what we do every single day by challenging? You have to be strategic. You have to be able to think strategically. And one of the big things that I say when I'm going through the hiring process, you have to see the big picture. So you have to take a step back. You have to zoom out for a moment. You can't just be focused on, this is a 401k plan, this is an equity award plan. What is that bigger picture? So how does it all fit together with financial wellness and help people think about just simple things like spending and budgeting? It all fits into a broader picture, and you have to be able to see that. And you constantly have to be eager to learn. If you don't know this space well, coming to the table and having an eagerness to learn, to dive right in. And again, going back to that innovative thinking, being able to think outside the box is super important.
Those are great tips. Intellectual curiosity, right? Goes a long way. Amanda, anything you'd like to add for this question in terms of advice you have for folks who might have interest in doing what you do or learning more about what it is that you all do?
I honestly wrote down the exact same thing Stacy said. We're very aligned. But I think the only thing I'd add is, being able to work with a wide group of people, right? Like when you come to an organization like Bank of America, like it's massive. And so, and if you're dealing in a business like ours, which, our business intersects with our wealth management arm, it intersects with our banking and lending arm. And so there's over 200,000 employees here, the personalities and you've got to be able to engage and communicate across various spectrums of individuals. And I really hone in on folks that can articulate and demonstrate that they're really strong collaborators, strong communicators. I think that's really important. But to Stacey's point, don't ever not apply because you say, I don't know the inner workings of a 401k. We can teach you all that. All the other stuff that's a lot harder to teach is what we really are looking for. And then with a really strong, development program, we'll get you the rest of the way from a technical perspective.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'm going to pivot to sort of a combo of one panelist question, with one question that I have, which is a little bit more about retirement plans. You've each made reference to this at some point in the conversation, and there is a question about sort of retirement more broadly in the chat. So Erin, I'd like to start with you. How do you align your long-term career goals with retirement plans to ensure a smooth transition? We talked a lot about how we're evolving every day, and a part of that evolving is sort of taking care of yourself for now and for the future version of you. So could you walk us through how you think about aligning long-term goals with retirement plans more broadly?
Yes, it's a great question, one that I've pondered many times along the way. I think as you're thinking about your long-term career and your goals for retirement, the best advice I can give is save and invest. I also follow my previous advice around when you need help, get help, just like I needed a lot of help managing kids and young family. And my husband and I, we get help for this as well. So we use our financial advisor. We use all of the tools available to us at Bank of America for planning for retirement, thinking through what spending in retirement looks like. I think if I didn't spend the last 5 years or so in the workplace benefits business, I don't think that I would be as in touch with these capabilities as I am now. Earlier in my career, HSA account, I wasn't really paying attention to that. And that's why I really value this role in terms of how can we do a great job in bringing the benefits and the impact that utilizing them the impact that that can make on your life later on is super important. So I think, save, invest, and get advice, because whoever your retirement plan may be offered through at your workplace, there are resources there today that you could be taking advantage of if you're not already.
I love that. Thank you for that tip. Amanda, anything you'd like to add there in terms of sort of long-term planning with retirement overall, and either how Bank of America supports this or how you generally think about that approach as a person?
Yeah, I mean, I think Erin's comments are right on. I think, we always tell clients, first you got to try to talk about and get your arms around, what do you want your retirement to look like? And then what do you want it to feel like? I want to feel freedom. I want to travel. I want to feel anchored to this place. I want to feel security. What do you want to feel? And then it becomes like a math conversation. Well, what is that all going to cost? And that's the thing that I think people really get right with way too late. Because when the average person really gets under the hood on what this lifestyle is going to cost 10, 15, 20, 40 years from now, it blows their mind how much the pool is. And then a lot of times they'll put it away and say, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to. Well, to Erin's point, when you get the right help, it's never too late to start working towards that. There's vehicles and products and tax strategies and all the things. So for me, I mean, that's like the financial advisor kind of answer, right? For me personally, my husband and I have had a lot of conversations, a lot more. I just turned 45 last week. So it's like getting realer and realer every day. What do we want it to feel like? We've kind of backed into a number, but I totally subscribe to like the second career thing, like whether you do part-time work, I'd love to ride off into the sunset as a part-time professor. Who knows, right? But we're in the stages now of kind of bridging that gap with a plan, even at 45, right? So I think it's really getting your arms around what you want it to look like and then backing into the math as soon as you can. It's really important.
Working backwards is always a good strategy for a lot of things. It applies to so many different fields. Also, I can see this for you, Amanda. You're talking about professorship in a second career. I think we can all manifest that for you. I have one more audience question before we do our little ending lightning round, and this comes from Carmen. I'm just going to read it verbatim, so pardon my eyes. How would you recommend individual contributors and managers who do not work in HR or benefits foster a company culture that supports work-life integration? So maybe taking off your workplace benefits hat, if you were an engineering department or you oversaw, a data analytics team, how would you think about really fostering that work-life integration culture, regardless of your seat in the organization? Stacey, I'll throw this one to you first.
Yeah, I think the foundational pieces of everything we talked about here today is really the recipe to design an inclusive culture. It's making sure people feel like, as I said earlier, they can bring their whole self to work, making sure you have employee resource groups that people can decide if they have a specific passion to participate in or not participate in, making sure that there's benefits that support the various life stages throughout the journey. I think those are the key elements of the recipe. And those at any company can do that. That is something that, regardless if you're in the HR or workplace benefits space, those, I say they're easy. I know they take some architecture and some building, but those are easy things that you can do to gain the affinity of your employees. And I talk to individuals that work in the HR departments of their companies all the time. They're so focused on retention of employees as well as attracting employees. And we consult with them on what are the best ways that you can do that. And they're across all industries, every industry from retail through all the way through manufacturing. So we sit down with them face to face and have these conversations all the time. And it's really those foundational elements of the recipe.
That's great. Thank you so much. Erin or Amanda, anyone?
Yeah. I'll just say, I think recognition and advocacy, right? So, it doesn't take a lot to recognize your people. And if you're the kind of manager that really has some context around what it took to meet sales goals, for example, or whatever your individual contributors are doing, and very authentically recognize them, not crazy, right? But in an appropriate way, that's huge. I think the other thing is if you can act as almost like a Sherpa through the organization to help them get connected with leveraging the context that Stacey said of like where they want to go. That's something else that is completely within your control that really means a lot to people. A lot of times when you're an individual contributor, you can feel disconnected from home office and the ability to like move into different parts of the organization. You don't have a line of sight into that. As a leader, I think it's your job to help bridge that gap for people. And I think it means a lot.
I completely agree with that. I love the idea of Sherpaing your managees and teammates towards their goals. Erin, anything you'd like to add to this conversation about folks who are not in HR benefits, helping foster this culture of integration?
Yeah, thanks, Morgan. What comes to mind for me in this moment is, you don't have to be in a workplace benefits type area to be a good listener and to really know your people. And if we think about what Amanda, Stacey, and I talked about our various pivotal moments, it was moments of vulnerability and transparency about trying to make it all work. So I think if you really know your team and you're a good listener, I think that goes a long way in and of itself.
Completely agree. I think there's something to be said about a manager or a teammate who just shows up for you, right? And who sees you as a person. That's instrumental. And this brings me to our final question, or our Fairy God Boss standing question about you all. So we mentioned a lot throughout today's conversation. You've explained so much about your experiences and your advice, and we're deeply appreciative for all of your insights. And we'd like to celebrate you by hearing a little bit more about a moment in your life that you would call one of your greatest achievements. So this is our tradition to ask panelists about a moment when they just take ownership over the amazing things that you've done. So bragging about yourself for a moment. So I'll have you take a second, maybe think about it, and share with us an accomplishment. It can be personal, it can be professional, that you are most proud of in your career. And whoever has one ready to go, I'll let you take the lead, and then we'll popcorn around between the remaining two people.
So I can go first, and it's hard. This is hard because
Yes,
we don't often like to toot our own horn. But if my kids are listening, giving birth to them, I would say is my greatest personal achievement. But outside of that, I made a commitment to myself when my son was 4 years old that I was going to run a marathon for the first time. So I put in the training. I would get up at 3 a.m. knowing that they were going to be still asleep, and I would go outside and I would run. So I've since done 2 marathons, a lot of smaller half marathons and different races. But that was something for me. Running was my time to decompress, to actually give back to myself. So I would say that probably from an accomplishment standpoint, I'm most proud.
Those are huge accomplishments. So thank you for sharing, Stacey. I could never run a marathon. I have talked about it in theory, in practice, that will never come to fruition. So hats off to you for both accomplishments. Amanda, what comes to mind as an accomplishment that you'd like to brag about today?
Well, now you're all going to think that like we're a bunch of running freaks over here. But so Stacey and I did not talk about this beforehand, but I have never been athletic. I have always struggled with my weight. And I had 3 sons and then I had a daughter. And for some reason, when I had a daughter, I really said, all right, you got to get like your fitness under control. So I did similar to what Stacey did. I worked out at 5 a.m. and ate super clean, got a nutritionist, yada, yada. I ended up losing about 100 pounds and ran Boston for the first time 2 years ago, and then ran it again last year. So went from being like an absolute like unhealthy person to not perfectly healthy by any means, but healthier. So that was a huge accomplishment for me as well. And now we're the sponsor for the Bank of America Marathon. So I don't know, Stacey, if you put in your lottery, but who knows? Hopefully someday we'll run again.
I love it. I love it. All these runners. That's amazing, Amanda. Thank you so much for sharing that. Erin, what comes to mind for you?
Well, Morgan, I have a bit of a different take on the question. So when I look back and, what would my bragging thing be? I would say I'm proud of how agile and adaptable I turned out to be over the years. Corporate team member, team leader, small business owner, operator, MBA grad, and now corporate leader again. Again, just agility and adaptability that my early 20s self, I don't think would have imagined. And then on a personal note, I would say I am super proud of the young adults that my children have become. And I appreciate that very much as well.
Those are great things to brag about. Amazing accomplishments. Being adaptable is a skill that not many people cultivate. So yes, Erin, that's a big pat on the back. And raising good humans is also very hard. So another huge pat on the back. We have 5 minutes left, and I have one more lightning round question for each of you, which is, what advice would you give your younger self? And this can be sort of a one-liner motto. There's one specific thing you're like, don't do this. We're all ears for the one piece of advice that you would give your younger self. Take the word younger, however you will.
Let's start.
Okay,
I'll
go
start
ahead.
because I know this to a T. Like, chill the out. Like, chill out. Like, it's all going to happen for you at work, the guy, the kids, the whole thing. So just chill out and enjoy the ride. And don't be so concerned about if you're perfect at every step. Like, you're doing great. Just enjoy it and relax a little bit. That is by far my biggest piece of advice for my younger self. And today.
Yes, and always.
I love that. Mine would be bold and have a voice. Those would be the two pieces of advice I would give my younger self. Would take a chance on yourself, be bold, and have a voice.
Erin?
All right. So mine are going to be a little practical. Number one, I would tell my younger self to live closer to your job. That would have made things a lot easier over a long period of time. And I tell people that today. And I would also tell myself to take more vacation.
All good advice.
Yeah.
All good advice. Chill out. Take vacation. That's what I'm walking away with. Have a voice. Amazing. Well, we are almost at time, and I just want to send a huge thank you to the three of you. I feel like I'm walking away from this conversation with a lot of amazing things to think about, a lot to contemplate. And I think our audience really valued all of your insights and your helpful anecdotes, and just the realness that each of you brought. So huge thank you just from me and the team. And thank you to all of the audience members who joined us today. It's always a pleasure to have folks dial in and listen to amazing women talk about their experiences. That's why I love my job. And I think that's why it's great to see folks like you join these conversations. As I mentioned earlier, this is a recording, so we will send this out to all of our registrants along with some resources and opportunities to learn more about Bank of America. But in the meantime, feel free to check out the Bank of America profile on Fairy Godboss. Certainly reach out and connect with our panelists, with myself, if you have any follow-up questions or thank yous or comments that you wanted to share. And of course, please feel free to leave us some feedback as well. We want to make these webinars as educational and helpful and impactful as possible. So if you have any thoughts, feedback, concerns, there should be a type form in the chat from my teammate, and feel free to leave us your feedback so we can make these even better in the future. But for now, again, thank you to Bank of America. Thank you to Erin and Stacy and Amanda. It was such a pleasure meeting you all, and I hope you have an amazing week.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Everybody take care. We'll see you next time.